Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So welcome to Ekadashi Stories. Today we will be reading the Padma Ekadashi, which also has many other names. It is also known as the Shayana Ekādaśī, and I believe also Śayana Ekādaśī. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Padma Ekadashi, Bhaviṣya-uttara Purāṇa. Yudhisthira Maharaj said, O Keshava, what is the name of that Ekadashi that occurs during the light fortnight of the month of Ashadha, June and July? Who is the worshipable deity for the auspicious day? And what is the process for observing this event? Lord Sri Krishna replied, O caretaker of this earthly planet, I shall gladly tell you of a wonderful historical event that the Deva Lord Brahma once narrated to his son Naradaji. One day Narada asked his father, what is the name of the Ekadashi that comes during the light part of the month of Ashadha? Kindly tell me how I should observe this Ekadashi and thus please the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Lord Brahma replied, O great saintly orator, O best of all sages, O purest devotee of Lord Vishnu, your question is as usual excellent for all mankind. There is nothing better than Ekadashi, the day of Lord Shri Hari, in this or any other world. It nullifies even the worst sins if observed properly. For this reason, I shall tell you about the Ashadha Shukla Ekadashi. So here the question that was asked by Yudhisthira Maharaj to Lord Krishna is brought to higher authority, of course from a material viewpoint, to higher authority, so Lord Brahma and Narada Muni. So Prabhupada instructs us that one should not try to supersede the previous acharyas by giving information that has already been given. So if the acharyas have already explained, there's no need to show one's learning by trying to expand upon the explanation, unless, of course, empowered to do so. So here Lord Krishna is showing by example. He says in Bhagavad Gita that whatever a great man performs, everyone follows, and whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And then he says also to Arjuna that even I am engaged in prescribed duty, for if I ever failed to do my prescribed duty, certainly all the world will follow me, and thus the whole world will be put into ruination. Therefore Lord Krishna acts as a perfect member of the Varnashram Dharma. So here we continue. Fasting on this Ekadashi purifies one of all sins and fulfills all one's desires. Therefore, whoever neglects to observe this sacred fast day is a good candidate for entering into hell. Ashadha Shukla Ekadashi is also famous as Padma Ekadashi. Just to please Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, one should fast on this day. Listen carefully, O Narada, as I relate to you a wonderful historical event that was recorded in the scriptures regarding this Ekadashi. Just hearing this account destroys all kinds of sins, along with all obstacles in the path to spiritual perfection. So this is very nice what Lord Brahma is saying here, because many of the Ekadashis stories are somewhat polluted with karma-kandic results. They often speak on how much one gains piety and so on. But here, Lord Brahma is pointing out the actual purpose of Ekadashi. He says that just to please Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, one should fast on that day. So that is the only sole purpose, nothing else. Just to please the Lord. That's it. And then another interesting thing, Brahma quotes also from scriptures. He's saying, I relate to you a wonderful historical event that was recorded in the scriptures. Lord Brahma, who received Vedic literature, who is actually the origin, he's the second cause, we can say. He appears to be the prime cause of Vedic mantra, because he's the primal personality in this universe. But even he quote from scriptures. So he says, we will speak of a story that is found in Shastra. And then he gives a stress on hearing. Just hearing this account destroys all kinds of sins. Just see. Now, why destroy all kinds of sins? Along with all obstacles on the path to spiritual perfection. So that is the thing. We should destroy our obstacles on the path of spiritual perfection. And that is why we have to increase this hearing. We have had a comment saying that, is it bona fide to read this Ekadashi story? Prabhupada did not do that, and so on. So, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. Perfect renunciation means to reject anything that will not make us Krishna conscious, and accept everything that can make us Krishna conscious. So the point is to present the purpose of Ekadashi according to Acharya Sampradaya. That is the real way of presenting this story, and not simply reading it without actually understanding. This is why, as representative of Srila Prabhupada, we have to establish the real purport of fasting on Ekadashis, because many Hindus also follow Ekadashi, but they do so with the wrong mentality. They do so with a desire to enjoy material happiness, so-called happiness. So that is wrong. So we should also discuss these stories, but by establishing the proper truth, that this Ekadashi is to be followed to please the Supreme Lord. Pure devotional service is above karma and jnana. Karma means I do an action, I get a result. Okay, jnana means I get some knowledge about this world, the absolute truth, and I speculate about the absolute truth. So without speculative knowledge, without a desire for fruitive results, one should simply fast to please the Lord, with the proper understanding that this is our duty. That's all. If one understands that my eternal relationship with the Lord is that I'm a servant, that's it, and that will never change. I'm always a servant of the Lord, and therefore my duty is to please Him. Serving means pleasing. So if we hear that following Ekadashi strictly pleases the Lord, then we do it. That is out of knowledge of the Lord. That is better than one thing, because there are 4 types of person that approach the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says 4 types of pious men. And Prabhupada explains to us that the person who approaches the Lord in knowledge is higher, because he doesn't surrender because he's in suffering. Oh, my Lord, my life is too much suffering now, therefore I surrender unto you. He doesn't surrender because he's in need of wealth. My Lord, now I have nothing, so please could you provide. So the one who is situated in knowledge is higher, that he understands that I'm not this body, therefore I am a spiritual part of the Lord, and my duty is to serve the whole. That is better way of surrendering. So here we begin the story that Lord Brahma narrated to his son, Narada Muni. O son, there was once a saintly king in the Sun dynasty, whose name was Mandhata. Because he always stood up for the truth, he was appointed emperor. He took care of his subjects as though they were his very own family members and children. On account of his piety and great religiosity, there was no pestilence, drought, or disease of any kind in his entire kingdom. All his subjects were not only free of all kinds of disturbances, but also were very wealthy. The king's own treasury was free of any ill-gotten monies, and thus he ruled happily for many years. We also have another example, Maharaja Yudhisthira. It is said that everyone in his kingdom was free from any disease, any lamentation, any suffering. One other name of Maharaja Yudhisthira was Ajatashatru, which means the one who has no enemy. So such saintly kings, by their expert management of the country, all subjects receive all necessities of life, material and spiritual. You see, no pestilence. Now with this COVID, what is happening? That is due to impious leaders. And here it is said there was not any wealth that was ill-gotten. Now the pockets of the politicians is filled with ill-gotten money, excess of tax, corruption in the government. All this, just try to compare what the Vedic government was as opposed to the Kali Yuga. We continue. Once, however, because of some sin in his kingdom, there was a drought for 3 years. The subjects found themselves beset by famine also. The lack of food grains made it impossible for them to perform the prescribed Vedic sacrifices, offer oblations to their forefathers and to the devas, engage in any ritualistic worship, or even study the Vedic literatures. Finally, they all came before their beloved king in a great assembly and addressed him thus: "O king, you always see to our welfare, so we humbly beg your assistance now. Everyone and everything in this world needs water. Without water, almost everything is rendered useless or dead. The Vedas call water Nara, and because the Supreme Personality of Godhead sleeps upon water, his another name is Narayana. God makes his own abode on water and takes his rest there. In his form as the clouds, the Supreme Lord is present throughout the sky and pours forth rains, from which grow the grains that maintain every living entity." So this is what Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita. Our body are maintained by food grains. Prabhupada explains that even the meat eater, they need food grain in order to feed the animal that they mercilessly slaughter. So our bodies are maintained from food grains, and grains are produced from rain. An abundance of rain produces a big supply of food grain. But rain is not within the control of any puny man. Rain is under the control of superior authority. If we go above, we learn that there's a very powerful personality whom we are little ants compared to, who is the king of heaven, Lord Indra, and he controls rains. But Lord Indra is within the control of Krishna. Ultimately, Krishna is in control. Krishna doesn't have to come and do everything himself and pour water here and there, no. He's completely independent. He has many different energies. So this whole world is divided into Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, and Adidaivika. So the Adidaivika is the managerial government of the Lord, all these demigods, and they bring about all the arrangements that human beings require. So simply, and rains are produced from sacrifice, yajna. Yajna means pleasing Lord Vishnu. Vishnu is the yajna purusha. So performing acts that pleases him will create rain. And we have experienced, Prabhupada was saying also that when he was here, he would bring his devotee in some city, they would have so much Harinam Sankirtan, and then rain would pour. Not only that, but we have experienced ourselves many times. Every time that we do a very great, nice festival, rain comes. When we have installed our Gauranitai deity in our house, it rained for a whole week, and there was rainbows almost every day. So we can see that as soon as the Lord is pleased, he will shower a lot of rain. Even in Singapore, every time that we used to have Ratha Yatra, on the very day it would pour like anything, just before the ceremony. So the citizens continue. "O king, the severe drought has caused a great lack of valuable grains. Thus we are all miserable, and the population is decreasing as people die off or leave your kingdom. O best ruler on earth, please find some solutions to this problem and bring us to peace and prosperity once again." The king replied, "You speak the truth, for grains are like Brahman, the absolute truth, who lives within grains and thereby sustains all beings. Indeed, it is because of grains that the entire world lives. Now, why is there a terrible drought in our kingdom? The Holy Scriptures discuss this subject very thoroughly. If a king or head of the country is irreligious, both he and his subjects suffer. I have meditated upon the cause of our problem for a long time, but after searching my past and present character, I can honestly say that I find no sin. Still, for the good of all you subjects, I shall try to remedy the situation. That is king. King means he must look upon all his subjects as his own sons. He does not rule with a propensity to exploit his subjects, but to protect them, to provide anything that they require materially and spiritually. So as soon as the citizen approach the king, yes, I will find a solution. That is responsible king. Not like now that there are crooked men that capture the post by hooks and crook, and then their only business somehow or other bring taxes and take some, put it in the pocket, and hiding taxes in so many ways. People are paying more and more for their products, but the little tax that you see of 5, 6 or whatever, 10, 15%, that is only declared tax. Why are the products more and more expensive? This is hidden tax. But people are not intelligent enough, they do not realize this. So by doing so, they increase their pockets. Here, we are in China. I heard one man had, 120 apartments, one of those communist members. I heard another man, it was a big thing in the news, he had 100 or so girlfriends. So you see, these so-called kings are actually the lowest of mankind. Those leaders in Kali Yoga are all condemnable, and they will all go to hell. Because it is says in the Shastra, here we shall go see a few verses. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, Text 16. Government men are always like carnivorous demons called Rakshasas, men-eaters. Sometimes these government men turn against the conditioned soul and take away all his accumulated wealth, being bereft of his life's reserved wealth. The conditioned soul loses all enthusiasm. Indeed, it is as though he loses his life. Purport. The word Rajakula Rakshasa is very significant. Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled about 5,000 years ago. Yet government men are referred to as Rakshasas, or carnivorous demons. If government men are opposed to a person, that person will be bereft of all his riches, which he has accumulated with great care over a long period of time. Actually, no one wants to pay income taxes. Even government men themselves try to avoid these taxes. But at unfavorable times, income taxes are exacted forcibly, and the taxpayers become very morose. You see, it's a fact. You stand against the government, even though the government is the worst mafia on earth, you will go down. So they are the biggest demons actually. They have all the power, and if you are on the bad side of their fence, then they take you down. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Text 24. Any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashrama, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. Just see. In the purport, Prabhupada speaks, a king, governor, or president should not take the opportunity to occupy his post without also discharging his duty. He must teach the people within the state how to observe the divisions of varna and ashrama. If a king neglects to give such instructions and is simply satisfied with levying taxes, then those who share in the collection, namely all the government servants and the head of the state, are liable to share the impious activities of the general mass. Can you imagine? Now practically everyone is addicted to the 4 pillars of sinful life: meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. And because these so-called leaders are exacting taxes without teaching the actual standard of civilization, Varna and Ashram system, they will have to take a portion of the sins committed by all their citizens. Therefore, all these leaders are going to hell. Okay, here, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 14. To give protection to the general mass of people who are citizens of the state is the prescribed occupational duty for a king. By acting in that way, the king in his next life shares 1/6 of the result of the pious activities of the citizens. But a king or executive head of state who simply collects taxes from the citizens but does not give them proper protection as human beings has the results of his own pious activities taken away by the citizens, and in exchange for his not giving protection, he becomes liable to punishment for the impious activities of his subjects. So just see, if a king is very good, he gets 1/6 of all the pious activities performed in the kingdom. So that is very good for a great king. He gets a lot of piety. But if he's impious, and he simply takes the taxes without helping his citizens, then he must take the impious activities of the subject. Can you imagine how heavy that will wait for him? How many hundreds of years he will have to spend in hell? Okay, so back to the story. So the citizens approached the king. The king honestly said, I cannot find sins. So this is not out of pride. He generally analyzed his life, and he saw that I have done everything according to Shastra. Plus, every king has got advisors and priests that will recommend him. So surely he has not done so on his own. So let's continue. Thinking in this way, King Mandhata assembled his army and entourage, paid his obeisances to me, and then entered the forest. So here Lord Brahma is saying, paid his obeisances to me. So we can understand that King Mandhata was worshipping Lord Brahma. He wandered here and there, seeking great sages in their ashrams and inquiring about how to resolve the crisis in his kingdom. At last he came upon the ashram of one of my other sons, Angira Muni, whose effulgence lit up all directions. Seated in his hermitage, Angira looked like a second Brahma. King Mandhata was very pleased to see that exalted sages, whose senses were completely under control. The king immediately dismounted his horse and offered his respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of Angira Rishi. Then the king joined his palms and prayed for the Muni's blessings. That saintly person reciprocated by blessing the king with sacred mantras. Then he asked him about the welfare of the 7 limbs of his kingdom. So the 7 limbs of a king's kingdom, so 1, the king himself, 2, the ministers, 3, his treasury, 4, his military forces, 5, his allies, 6, the brahmanas, and 7, the sacrificial performances performed in the kingdom and the needs of the subjects under his care. Just see how Vedic culture is exalted. Every single aspect, even kingship, is perfectly presented. Everything is there in Vedic literature. So the great Rishi, Angira Rishi, knew very well that a king is engaged in managing the kingdom. Therefore, he asks proper, relevant question. He did not ask how your business is going or so forth. After telling the sage how the 7 limbs of his kingdom were situated, King Mandhata asked the sage about his own situation and if he was happy. Then Angira Rishi asked the king why he had undertaken such a difficult journey into the forests, and the king told him of the affliction his kingdom was suffering. The king said, "O great sage, I am ruling and maintaining my kingdom while following the Vedic injunctions, and thus I do not know the reason for the drought. To solve this mystery, I have approached you for help. Please help me relieve the suffering of my subjects." Angira Rishi said to the king, "The present age, Satya Yoga, is the best of all ages. For in this age, Dharma stands on all four legs. In this age, everyone respects Brahmanas as the topmost members of society. Also, everyone fulfills his occupational duties, and only twice-born Brahmanas are allowed to perform Vedic austerities and penances. Although this is a standard, O lion, among kings, there is one Shudra who is unlawfully performing the rites of austerity and penance in your kingdom. This is why there is no rain in your land. You should therefore punish this laborer with death, for by so doing you will remove the contamination inflicted by his actions and restore peace to your subjects. So the system of Varnashram Dharma in previous ages, this is the Satya Yoga, the first age in the rotation of 4 ages. So the system of Varnashram Dharma was perfectly spread out throughout the globe and perfectly followed by everyone. In these ages, even a little discrepancy, as we can see, even one citizen Shudra who thought that, oh, let me also perform austerity and penance, although they were not qualified, he had to be punished. In those ages, it was pretty much by birth that Brahmana was a Brahmana, Shudra was Shudra, because there was no mixture of any castes. Brahmana were only with Brahmanas, men and women, Vaishyas only with Vaishyas, in this way, Shudras and Kshatriyas. So the purity of the family was kept. But as the ages advanced, there was some mixtures. And because of these mixtures, we cannot anymore say that someone who is born as a Brahmana is automatically a Brahmana. And plus, we learn also from Sastra, not only from the Puranas, but also the Upanishads, that a real Brahmana is one who has the qualification of a Brahmana. And a Shudra is one who has qualification of a Shudra. So in this age of Kali, it is mentioned in one of the Purana that many demons will take birth in Brahmana family, and that their business was simply to cause pain to Vaishnavas or real Brahmanas. So anyway, so you could see how strict it was, this Shudra who disobeyed Vedic injunction of he was not supposed to study Shastra, because a Shudra means less intelligent class, means the leg of the society. They are not meant to try to understand this Vedic knowledge. They cannot. Low intelligence. Therefore, work, labor. By your labor, you will get purified. By serving higher classes of men, you will be able to also advance, and you will get a higher birth in your next life. Of course, when it comes to Krishna consciousness, everyone is allowed to approach, but a Shudra who approaches Krishna is certainly not a Shudra. Because to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that one must have performed all Vedic rituals, all Vedic sacrifice and austerities. So it is not a cheap thing to become a devotee. But in this case, this was Varnashram Dharma. So Shudra is a laborer. He had no business in trying to study Shastra. Therefore, for all the havoc that he has caused, 3 years no rain, how many family has he made suffer? So therefore he had to be punished for his sin, therefore death. Relieve him of his sinful reactions so that he will not suffer in his next life. He will be able to attain a higher birth and solve the problem. We continue. The king then replied, "How can I kill an offenseless performer of austerity and sacrifice? Please give me some spiritual solution." Wow, now just see how the king was liberal. Even though the Shudra had no business in trying to perform austerity and sacrifice without the sanction of Brahmanas, he then says, he sees only the good side. He says, this Shudra is performing austerity and sacrifice. I do not want to kill him. So please give me some other spiritual solution. The great sage Angira said, "O king, you should observe a fast on the Ekadashi that occurs during the light fortnight of the month of Ashadha. This auspicious day is named Padma Ekadashi. and by its influence plentiful rains and thus grains and other foodstuffs will surely return to your kingdom. This Ekadashi bestows perfection upon its faithful observers, removes all kinds of bad element, and destroys all obstacles on the path to perfection. O King, you, your relatives, and your subjects should all observe the sacred Ekadashi fast. Then everything in your kingdom will undoubtedly return to normal. So the king, being a very pious man, developed very good quality, and he refused to kill what he said is an offenseless performer of austerity and sacrifice. So these are some of the qualities of a devotee, is that he will see the good in everyone. He will see only the best and try to bring that out instead of focusing on the bad. So the bad side was that he's a Shudra, lesser born, and he's without sanction from Brahmanas studying Vedic literature or performing austerity and sacrifice. But no, he did not see like that. Is that, oh, this offenseless performer is trying to become purified by austerity and sacrifice. How can I kill? Upon hearing these words, the king offered his obeisances and then returned to his palace. When the Padma Ekadashi arrived, King Mandhata assembled all the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras in his kingdom, and instructed them to strictly observe this important fast day. After they had observed it, the rains fell, just as the sage had predicted. And in due course of time, there were abundant crops and a rich harvest of grain. By the mercy of the Supreme Lord Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, all the subjects of King Mandhata became extremely happy and prosperous. Just see, so simple. Everyone fasted today, and then the rain came. How simple are the solutions? Yet because these atheistic leaders do not take guidance from Vedic scriptures and the sages who have laid down an impeachable instruction for us, they do not know how to solve problem. Here, he approached a saintly person. He approached the Rishi, and he knew, have all my subjects fast, one day, that's it, finish. The rain falls, no economic problem. Therefore, O Narada, everyone should observe this Ekadashi fast very strictly, for it bestows all kinds of happiness, as well as ultimate liberation, upon the faithful devotee. Lord Sri Krishna concluded, My dear Yudhisthira, Padma Ekadashi is so powerful that one who simply reads or hears its glories become completely sinless. O Pandava, one who wishes to please me should strictly observe this Ekadashi, which is also known as Shayana Ekādaśī. O lion among kings, Yudhisthira Maharaj, whoever wants liberation should regularly observe a fast on this Ekadashi, which is also the day when the Chaturmasya fast begins. Thus ends the Vrajavasi narration of the glories of the Ashada Shukla Ekadashi, also known as Padma Ekadashi or Shayana Ekādaśī, from the Bhaviṣya-uttara Purāṇa. So here, another beautiful story of Ekadashi. So I hope that these videos are encouraging you to follow Ekadashi more strictly. We will also try to increase our austerity on Ekadashi. I'm still not at Nirjal fast, but we are trying to get nearer. So although I'm speaking, some of you are more advanced, definitely most of you are more advanced than me, and I'm sure that many of you are fasting on Ekadashi. But then that is my service to you. I'm reading the story to you. So please try to follow the best as you can, and bless me that I can follow the best as I can. And I will see you on the next Ekadashi. Okay. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.